Cloud. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Anthony Haskett. I am the Financial Aid Outreach Specialist here at Las Positas College. Thank you for joining me as I kind of start to dive deeper into what financial aid is and how it can help you and your son, daughter, or whoever with tuition and school and that sort of thing. So let's get started. All right. All right. So what is financial aid? And financial aid is money available to assist students with the cost of attending college. Financial aid comes from the federal government, the state government, and academic institutions and private sources in forms of scholarships. So, there's different sorts of financial aid you can receive that help pay with tuition and fees, books and supplies, transportation, housing, food, personal, and miscellaneous. Um, a lot of times what I see is there is a misconception of what financial aid is, and it's a lot of things. And one of the first things is gift aid, which comes in the forms of grants, fee waivers, scholarships, and those do not have to be repaid. Um, and so there's also work study, which is money earned by the student as a payment for a job on campus, sometimes off campus. But for example, we do have here in our financial aid office a few student workers that are, working in the front office that, helps with their financial aid. They work 20 hours a week, just kind of working the front desk, helping students. I know I went to the University of Hawaii at Hilo and played basketball there, and we had student workers helping out with the games in forms of, mopping the floor and helping with game management. So there's different types of work study for different departments and what you're interested in. Um, and then the last thing is, and usually this is the misconception about um, financial aid, is that it's loans, and it's not just loans. And loans really is borrowed money needed to be paid back with interest. And there's private loans and loans from the government, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on as well. All right. Let's go to the next slide. One of the terms that you may see, especially when you start to get award letters from schools after being accepted by them, is that you might see cost of attendance. And cost of attendance is just the estimated average amount it will cost to be a student at that school. The COA is an estimate of, again, all that stuff that we talked about: tuition and fees, food and housing, books and supplies, transportation, personal expenses. A lot of times on the award letters is the tuition and fees are a direct cost. That usually doesn't change. But the food and housing, the books and supplies, that can go up or down based on your needs. For example, at the community college level, we have a lot of commuters or a lot of students that are just local. So if they were to see the cost of attendance to come to Las Positas, they probably wouldn't have to maybe account for food and housing. Maybe they don't have to account for different things that they already have because they're not spending their money to be in a dorm or to rent. So sometimes you can just take those costs out already. So how do you apply for financial aid? How do you apply for financial aid? And you use that when what I like to talk about is FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. And I like to think of it as an umbrella that hits all the different federal aid, state aid, and institutional aid. So once you apply for FAFSA, that hits all that. You don't have to apply for any other financial aid. That applies itself to any school in countrywide, whether you want to go to UC Berkeley or you want to go to Duke University, right? If you fill out the FAFSA application, that's going to go to those schools once you put that school code. So if you look right below that link, our Las Positas school code is 030357, and that will automatically get your FAFSA application to that school. All right. And you may see right under that is who applies for FAFSA. And you might be like, oh, well, I didn't know. Well, there's FAFSA, right? And then there's what we call CADA, which is the California Dream Act. And I'll go over that a little bit later once we get to that slide. But essentially, who applies for the FAFSA? If you're a US citizen, if you're an eligible non-citizen, I actually just helped out a student yesterday who has a green card, and he was unsure of which application to fill out. And we went and filled out the FAFSA application together, as well as there's students with a T visa. Those are the students that apply for the FAFSA application. So now, as you are approaching the end of your senior year of high school, your son, daughter, or whoever is going to start to be going to the 4-year level or the community college level, whatever school. The FAFSA 25-26 is now open. It opened up on December 1st. So now is the time to start filling out the FAFSA application. I'm always stressing, and I'm a big get your work done early. So I would try to do the FAFSA as soon as possible. So I know that it says right here in the bottom right, FAFSA deadline for Max Aid is March 2nd, 2025. That's the deadline for Max Aid. It's not that FAFSA closes. FAFSA usually never closes until way later after the year. Like example right now, the FAFSA year for freshman college students or whoever's in college right now, 24-25, you can still fill out a FAFSA application for 24-25 in case you forgot so. But again, you may not get maximum aid if you do it way later. So I highly recommend that you apply as early as possible, get it processed as early as possible so that you can see how much federal aid you're eligible for, how much state aid you can be eligible for, all that good stuff. Okay. Let's see here. Sorry about that. Let me go ahead. Let me stop sharing for a second. So sorry. There we go. Okay. Boom. Sure. All right. Hopefully everyone can see it. If you can't see it or you can't hear me or something, just type it in the chat. I'll glance at it real quick. But going on to our next slide, okay, is which parent must complete the FAFSA? And so in terms of maybe you are married, and that's not an issue. All you have to do, one parent has to fill out the FAFSA if you're married, okay, and then they take your joint taxes. All right, they're going to take your joint taxes for the 2025-26 FAFSA. They take the 2023 tax return. So that's all you have to that's all you have to worry about, if it's even worrying. But again, if a parent's divorced, separated, or they are never married, or they don't live together, only one parent must complete the FAFSA. Typically, it's whoever provides the most financial support, the person who claimed the student on the taxes, not the parent that the student lived with the most. All right, not the parent that student lived with the most. Okay, if a parent has remarried as of the date the FAFSA is filed, then the step parent's income, assets, and dependents must be reported on the FAFSA, and then that is how you may require 2 contributors to invites from the student. All right. So when you go to this application, and then I'll go over it now. A parent is a contributor. You'll see the word contributor. That's a parent or a guardian or legal guardian, and that good stuff. Okay. Contributors. All right, a student's or parent's answers on the FAFSA will determine which contributors will be required to provide the information. Okay, so essentially the student is going to fill out their own FAFSA application. Okay, then they're going to send an invite to their parent or their contributor to provide their personal information, excuse me, and their financial information in their own sections of the FAFSA form. But again, just to be clear, just because you're filling out this financial aid application does not mean that you are financially responsible for the student's education costs. I know that some parents will be paying for their students' tuition, and some may not, and that's totally fine. You know, it is what you are able to do or you don't want to do. So, again, students will invite contributors to complete their portion of the FAFSA. So, if you are looking to complete your financial aid application, the things that I usually ask of your student to have when they fill it out is their social security, their birthday, and that's really it. And then once you fill out, and once they get to more of the end of the financial, they're going to need the parent or contributor's social security, their email address, so that when they send that invite, and we'll go over it in a little bit, so that they can make sure it's getting sent to the right person. So again, that last thing right there, if a student's parent is married, remarried, unmarried, and living together, they must invite at least one parent as a contributor. And there is an option, it's optional, you can invite the other parent as well. Okay. Um, Parent questions, you may see it's really, really fantastic. I've dabbled in it a little bit. Unfortunately, I'm an independent student, so I'm not able to see the parent side. But comparison from last year's FAFSA to this year's FAFSA, there was about 100 something questions last year, and now it's back down to like 40. So it should be a little shorter, it should be a little easier, easier to manage. But again, some of the parent questions are, for example, are your parents married to each other? Do your parents live together? Did one parent provide more financial support than the other during the past 12 months? Has the parent you identified in the previous question remarried? And of course, it'll be like, if no, next question. If yes, you'll just provide a little bit more information. All right. Um, Next slide. Again, typically what's going to happen is you're going to invite a parent. So this is this is the screen that they're going to see. All right, so that they can invite a parent. You're going to provide first name, last name, month, social security of your parent, email address, and then confirm the email address. Typically, an issue that I run into, and I just ran into it the other day with a student, is they're like, my parent never received the invite link, or when they clicked it and they made their account, they didn't see my FAFSA on their account. And really, 95% of the problem is that they didn't match up the information that they entered. So, for example, I did have this happen one time. A student put the wrong date of birth. Obviously, it's not going to match up. They're not going to receive it. I do, however, have run into first name, last name. I've had a student say, my dad goes by Juan Antonio, so I'm going to put Juan Antonio Torres. And then the dad goes, well, I just go by Juan, and my last name's Torres. And he puts Juan Torres, and then boom, because it didn't match up, the parent did not receive the FAFSA application. So I highly recommend making sure maybe you take a picture of it when you go back with your parent, you make sure that all the information they put on their account is correct so that it matches up and they receive the invitation. They will receive the invitation through email. All right, it'll say, you've been invited to fill out a FAFSA form, click this link, it'll take you to studentaid.gov, you create your account if you haven't had one already, and then you go through that process. So if you are a contributor without an SSN, there is an option, all right, and right below the Social Security box. Typically, that's for spouses or parents who are undocumented or foreign citizens. You will still be able to make an account and create an FSA ID without a Social Security. You just click that box and indicate you don't have a Social Security. Um, just so you know that none of the information put on the FAFSA application is shared with anybody else, such as the Department of Homeland Security or Immigration Enforcement. So you do not have to worry about, if you don't have a Social Security and you are undocumented, about that being an issue. If there are problems with you just trying to get an FSA ID without a Social Security, you are able to call their helpline at that number or visit their website. All right. So now, next step for the contributor. All right. Contributors receive an email informing they've been identified as one. You create an FSA ID if you don't already have one, and then you complete your portion of the FAFSA, and you're required to provide the required information on the student's FAFSA form. I run into this issue as well sometimes. A student will be like, well, I submitted my FAFSA and their contributor refused to provide their information, which resulted in an incomplete FAFSA form and then thus for became ineligible for federal student aid. So if you would like your student to be considered for financial aid, you will have to consent and approve, all right, to have your federal tax information transferred directly to the FAFSA. So at the end of it, you're going to be asked to sign, consent, and approve. You got to click the box, submit, and then that's how your federal tax information is given to the FAFSA so that they can determine from there if you are eligible for federal financial aid. Um, it just allows the U.S. Department of Education to share their tax information with post-secondary institutions and state higher education agencies, such as CSAC, which is for state financial aid, which we'll talk later on. Okay. If you ever need help answering common questions, or I'm here as a resource as well, especially at the end of this webinar, to answer any common questions about the FAFSA. I think a lot of it is there's a lot of information readily available on their website to help you walk through the process. Sometimes you may just want to call somebody, or you may just want to reach out to a financial aid office such as Las Positas College. And we have advisors, front desk help, as well as myself to help out and fulfill your financial aid application. I do get students that don't go to Las Positas that I've had presented before, or they'd seen me tabling at our high school nights, and they will reach out and ask any questions they have for me. All right. That's kind of the gist of the financial aid application. Next step is the difference, right? I talked about CADA, which is the California Dream Act, and there is a population that needs to apply for this instead of FAFSA. And again, it's really, really similar, except that it's just who applies to what. And so if you are an undocumented student, a DACA student, you have AB 540 status, you're a TPS recipient, you have a U visa, you submit the California Dream Act. A lot of times it's just undocumented students that will apply for the California Dream Act so that they can also receive financial aid. It's the same as FAFSA. You submit one application yearly. The FAFSA, again, I'll repeat if you're joining late, you submit one application for the FAFSA or the CADA, not both, only one yearly. So once you've done it yearly, you've done your job, and then that applies your student to federal financial aid, state financial aid, as well as institutional financial aid. Talking a little bit more about kind of the CADA, AB 540 is basically how do you pay in-state tuition as an undocumented student. You can gain AB 540 status if you have completed these two requirements, an attendance requirement, as well as the completion of course of study. So that's how you get AB 540 eligibility. Okay. Similar to the FAFSA, one parent's information is needed. That's the criteria. Quickly, I'm not going to go through it, but again, and then if it's two parents' information, it's typically, you're not married, but you're living together, or, married to each other, or married or remarried to a student step parent. That's where it kind of differs from the FAFSA application. All right. Going on to the next slide, sources of financial aid. So again, just like I talked about in the beginning, there's now state financial aid, there's federal financial aid, and there's institutional aid. We'll go in depth, as we go. State financial aid can consist of our California College Promise Grant fee waiver, very, very popular, especially just whatever college you go to, Cal Grant, the Student Success Completion Grant, the Chafee Grant. Now at the federal level, there's the Pell Grant, our Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant, which is SEOG, the Federal Work Study, as well as student loans. And then, of course, institutional aid, which we're fortunate enough at Las Positas to offer our free tuition promise as well as scholarships. We offer scholarships here at Las Positas. So, diving into state financial aid, if you come to a community college, this can waive the $46 per unit enrollment fee for California residents with unmet financial need. So typically when you fill out your FAFSA application, you'll get a number and it says how much you're qualifying for federal aid. Now, the state receives your information and determines, if you have a certain unmet financial need, then you qualify for the fee waiver. There's no minimum amount of units you need to be enrolled in. And then again, just like I said earlier, FAFSA has the umbrella of all this financial aid under it. So you don't need to apply for these individually. You will be automatically screened for the fee waiver when submitting the FAFSA or the CADA. Okay. Moving on, we've got Cal Grant, and and this is a really, I would say, more common grant. And let's take a look at Cal Grant C because there's A, B, and C. Just knock this out real quick. It's the Cal Grant C is just for vocational, technical, or occupational programs that last 2 to 4 semesters in length. There's no GPA requirement for that one. So that one's a special case of financial aid you can receive if you take one of those programs. Now, if you go back up, Cal Grant A is for high school seniors or recent high school grads. For this, you got to qualify, you need at least a 3.0 GPA, and typically that's in those years in high school that count. So like the sophomore and junior year, your cumulative GPA has to be at least above a 3.0 GPA, and typically is for low to middle income students. And I know I get this question, well, how do I know how much financial aid I might qualify based on my income? It's not based on income only. There's no bracket, there's no chart that determines if you make X amount of money, this is how much money you're qualified. Because essentially, the FAFSA application, the government takes in a bunch of factors like your income, like your family size, like if you're married or separated, a bunch of different variables to determine how much aid you are eligible to receive. So it is not income based. There's no brackets. There's no amount that you'll get based on income. All right. Cal Grant A is for UCs, CSUs, and private schools in California only. Essentially, what they have Cal Grant A for is for tuition purposes only. So they don't allow it for community colleges because we have our fee waivers, such as the California College Promise Grant. We have our own free tuition promise. So that is for the UCs and CSUs and private schools in California only. Let's say you go to a community college and you are eligible for a Cal Grant A. You may be thinking, am I missing out on that money because I can't use it for community college? And the answer is no. They put that money into reserve. So if you go to a community college for 2 years and you're eligible for Cal Grant A, they're going to put that money in reserve so that when you transfer to a California school, you will be able to use that money for tuition. Okay, moving on to Cal Grant B. All right, for high school seniors and recent high school grads, you must at least have a 2.0 GPA. And this is really for low income students, okay? And that's for, again, UCs, CSUs, private schools, and community colleges. So now if you're a community college student, you are eligible to receive Cal Grant B. All right? So that's kind of extra financial aid that you can receive from the state if you are eligible. I know I went to a community college when I was going to college, and I was eligible for Cal Grant A, and I had X amount of money in my reserve. It's based on your income again. And then when I unfortunately did not transfer to a California school, I did not get that money. But if I had gone to UC San Diego, I would have gotten X amount of money from that Cal Grant A. All right. Quickly, another grant is the Chafee Grant, and this is for foster youth. So if it applies to you, you'll get $5,000 a year if you're eligible. And then again, here are a couple of the eligibility requirements. You cannot have reached your 26th birthday as of July 1st of the award year. You have to be a current or former foster youth or placed in an out-of-home care by a tribe or tribal organization between 16 and 18. The Chafee Grant, unlike all the other grants, does require a separate application. Okay, diving deeper into federal financial aid. All right. The federal Pell Grant. Aid is awarded based on financial need, and you'll see when you apply for FAFSA, the student aid index. And that's kind of what I was talking about when they take income, family size, your living, all that stuff, student aid index, and they'll give you a number. It's not, the number is not money. It's just, it's based on financial need. So right now, for students that are in college right now, the max Pell Grant that they can receive is $7,396 a year. The amount will always vary. Some may get less, and that's the maximum you can receive. You will receive the Pell Grant award, you'll receive the same amount at any school you go to. So if I were going to Las Positas and I was getting the Max Pell Grant, or maybe I'm getting a little less and I want to go to DVC, I will still get the same amount of Pell at every school I attend. And it says must apply annually through FAFSA. Again, if you fill out your financial aid, your free application for federal student aid, you will be automatically screened for the federal Pell Grant. The FAFSA deadline for federal aid is June 30th of the end of the school year. I recommend that you do it way before then. I highly recommend, so that there's no issues. If you get the confirmation that you did it, and then you get the amount that you're going to get when you go to your respective college, I highly recommend you do that. Highly recommend you do that so that you can get that and plan ahead. If you, for some certain reason that you didn't apply, you can still apply and receive retroactive funding if you apply late. For example, students here at Las Positas may have not known about a FAFSA application. They weren't able to attend a webinar like this, or their parents didn't, they're not educated. And then all of a sudden I go to their class and they're like, oh my goodness, I don't know what FAFSA is. I want to apply for that. It's not too late. And then they can see what money they're eligible for later on. So you can still apply late, but I recommend that you do it as soon as possible. Here's kind of a smaller grant. It's the federal SEOG. It's just a program with limited funds, and to receive this, you have to be a Pell Grant recipient. And then it's based on financial need and your student aid index. Typically, you'll receive full Pell Grant if your student aid index falls less than 0. And then the amount for the SEOG is $300 a semester with at least 6+ units. You may not receive the same amount of SEOG at other colleges. And again, you'll automatically be screened for if you receive Pell Grant. Federal work study, okay, is federal financial aid program with limited funds, just like I talked about earlier. It's money through a job that may be on or off campus. Typically, it's on campus. So I'll give another example. We have a counseling center, and we've got student workers working the front desk, helping schedule appointments, helping call for students and their appointments, all that good stuff. They're working 20 hours a week. That helps pay for their tuition, helps with their financial aid. Work hours are typically very, very flexible with the class schedule. And again, each college has its own award policy, pay rates, and procedures. So what we do here may not be the same thing Chabot might do as far as how much money they receive or pay rates or procedures. It's a very popular program. So if that's something you're interested in when you get to your respective college, is I would try to express interest to your financial aid office or whoever it is that you're interested in work study, because a lot of times it is first come, first serve. Federal direct loans, okay? Again, financial aid is not just about loans, but if you are in need, you need financial help, and you're not able to pay everything yourself, you can take out a loan. And it's money borrowed by the Department of Education, by the student. And for the subsidized loans, you must have a financial need, and the government pays interest while you're in school. If you're not required to have financial need to take out an unsubsidized loan. And for that, the student is responsible for costs of interest while in school. And what that means is after you've completed school all the way, you're typically required to start paying 6 months after graduation. And that's when the interest has occurred or whatnot, so that you'll pay it 6 months after your graduation. Usually the limits are set by the Department of Education, though a college does have the ability to lower the amount they can give you with cause. Just like I talked about, there's a 6 month grace period after graduation before you have to repay, and you will have a box on your FAFSA application that expresses your interest. If you say no, which a lot of students just say no, you can reach out to your financial aid office later on if something happens, an emergency happens, and you do need a loan. So you can express interest and then they can help you work through that. Um, Institutional financial aid. We are again fortunate enough at Las Positas College to have a free tuition promise, and that's continuing on for 2025 and 2026. And essentially, eligible students are, if they are if they are first-time college students, if they're full-time college students in their first year, as well as California residents. Um, so again, first-time college students, not attended college before, you must be enrolled and complete 12 or more units, and then you must be a California resident, as well as apply to Las Positas, as well as complete the FAFSA application. And so, excuse me, a lot of times the questions asked is, oh, well, I took a summer class before I went. Luckily, a summer course does not count towards not having attended college before. So if you attend a Las Positas summer class and then you enroll full time in the fall, you are still eligible to receive free tuition. And essentially, that's just like our Promise Grant fee waiver that's offered at community college level, and it waives that $46 per unit fee. And when you take 12 units times 46, that ends up being around $650 off the top of my head. And so if you're eligible for this, that's saving you around $600 per semester. So that's a huge money saver. And I usually like to think, maybe you get free tuition and then maybe you qualify for the Pell Grant or the Cal Grant. And now you're making up a little bit of money, especially you're a student maybe that's renting, leasing an apartment or whatnot. Now you're able to maybe pay a little bit more, get a little bit more for groceries and all that good stuff. All right. Um, so now continuing on, scholarships. Okay. Scholarships, luckily, Las Positas offers scholarships, but there also are scholarship opportunities through web pages, search engines, organizations, maybe companies. So, for example, I presented at an English class, about a month ago, and the professor was adamant about his students applying for scholarships because sometimes you never know who's applying and who's not applying. And a lot of times it might air to not a lot of students are applying for scholarships, so you might be that one person. And the professor worked at Red Robin, and there was a Red Robin scholarship which he applied to. Nobody else applied to it. So by the end of his sophomore year at his community college, he received that scholarship from Red Robin, and I think it was like $500 that he was able to put towards the cost of his school for the next year when he transferred. So that's just an example of an outside scholarship. Um, Now there's in school scholarships, and that awards may be based on talent, grades, financial need, or any criteria determined by the donor or our foundation. And a lot of times for institutional scholarships, you have to write a personal statement and you need letters of recommendations so that you can, because they take a lot of applications all the time. And so then the donor foundation determines the award amount in addition to deadlines and the application requirements. So for example, maybe an institutional scholarship may not require a personal statement or a letter of recommendation. At my school, they offered a scholarship for basketball players that was academic based on if I got a 3.5 GPA through 30 units, I would receive $5,000. So that's just another option, like that's another uh, option that schools have is that they have different donors and different requirements for different types of scholarships. Going on to the next slide. Never ever pay money to apply for a scholarship. Never. Okay. Yeah, I think it's reverse logic to pay money to receive money. So never, if a scholarship's asking you to do that, it's probably not real. It's probably fake. So how do you avoid scams? You can go through the U.S. Department of Education through their resource website. You can go to the Federal Trade Commission, and a lot popular is scholarship searches through fineaid.org or bigfuture.collegeboard.org. Um, Most oftentimes, I would just make sure that I'm going to .gov or .org organizations just to make sure I'm going through legit organizations and just making sure I'm going through legitimate. A lot of times, high schools, offer resources for scholarships. I know I was at Dublin High School, and one of the counselors was giving out a sheet for local scholarships, so students can take advantage. And again, apply for scholarships. You never know if you're the only one that applies. You never know. All right. Kind of wrapping up now. Um, Going to talk about a success story. So I'm always just so encouraged to share this story. Henry Palmer was a basketball player for me last year. I recruited him out of Bishop O'Dowd High School. He ended up graduating last year an AA degree in business. He was our A2 Men president, which is our African American, I'm actually wearing the t-shirt right now, African American Male Education Network and Development, and he was president of there. And now he's a current student at the Cal Berkeley Haas School of Business. And how did he pay for school? Because I know sometimes, he didn't have the means to pay. He received from Las Positas scholarships, like our Coach Costello basketball scholarship, the Clow Memorial Business Scholarship, the Academic Senate Scholarship, Margaret Emery Health Sciences Scholarship. That added up to about 2,100. He received the Cal grant that was in reserve. That was 14K right there going to his tuition. Then from Cal Berkeley, he was able to apply and receive the Regents and Chancellor Scholarship for 26,000, as well as the Middle Class Scholarship for 1,200. And in the end, through financial aid and scholarships, 43K in total scholarships and financial aid, which completely covered his costs to go to Cal Berkeley, where he's as well as a walk-on basketball player there. So now he found a way to be able to attend school through financial aid. And for him, he's not high class. He's kind of that middle class income type student. So he was able to benefit and just reap the benefits from financial aid. So wrapping it up here real quick, if you get anything out of this webinar and presentation is that apply for financial aid annually, making sure that if you apply for financial aid one time, you're going to be automatically screened for the federal financial aid, the state financial aid, as well as the institutional financial aid. Because a lot of times, there's programs on campus that require you to fill out a FAFSA before you can even receive the benefits of maybe we have an EOPS program, which helps maybe lower income, middle income students receive maybe extra grants, extra gas cards, extra counseling, priority registration, all that good stuff. And you got to apply for financial aid. If you don't apply for financial aid and your reason's like my income's too high, well, I always say you never know how much money you can receive because there's no bracket, and or your financial aid situation might change within the year. Always, you never want this to happen, but jobs, you could be laid off, maybe, a health emergency, your income gets lowered. And if you didn't apply for financial aid, you may not have received the benefits of that. When you would do apply for FAFSA, always keep a copy of all forms submitted. Always review your application to make sure that all the answers are correct. And then if you have any questions or whatsoever, communicate with your college financial aid. I know a lot of times when if you apply for financial aid, that they'll give you a list. You can send up to 20 schools. You don't know where you're going to go yet. You can send 20 schools your FAFSA. So if I didn't know if I was going to UC Berkeley, UC Davis, Diablo Valley College, Las Positas College, I can send it to all four of those schools. And then if I get accepted to UC Berkeley, I get my award letter and acceptance. And in that, they'll put in your financial aid in the award letter, as well as, other things. So that basically tells you how much the cost is, how much financial aid will cover a little bit. But again, if you have any questions, you can contact them, or as well as contact me. And I'll have my information at the end. I'll have my email at the end, as well as our website. So that kind of wraps up everything. I'll leave about the rest of it for questions. I'm going to stop the recording. I'm going to make sure for those that came in late that the recording will be sent to the PUSD counselors so that they can send it out to you guys that whether you were late or weren't able to attend. All right, so I'll leave the rest of this for questions after I stop recording. There we go.